about how parents are often afraid of rules, that kids are going to rebel. And a lot of dads, particularly dads, do a lot of, and from a divorced vantage point, do a lot of guilty parenting. You know, because the kids can play you so easy. In Mommy's house, I can, you know, Mommy lets me go to every Yankee game, so I'm not coming over, you know. And you're like, oh, let's go to the Yankee game, have some ice cream, you know. And this book really talked about that it's okay to have rules. And so it started out with the kind of game between us about figuring out what our house's rules are. And I'm such a, such an actor in a way that I just started improving this idea about a night, you know, and so that's where it came from. Yeah.
Ethan, let me say, you could give C.S. Lewis and Dickens a run for their money with your writing. I appreciate your point. And I love the way you read, so it would be great to have it on audio. But I have a little personal question.
Yeah.
I noticed that there's a lot of references to wonderful birds and ornithology and all that, and I appreciate that a lot. Do your kids or you, by any chance, have you owned any
Well, you know,
birds?
it was my wife's idea to do that because, you know, there's something, it's strange. You know, this started out as rules for a princess, but my son wasn't really into following those. And I found that women are like knights too.
Yeah.
And so Ryan had the idea that what's beautiful about birds, first of all, there's something innately noble about them. You know, I mean, in the Native American communities, they always represent nobility and nobility of thought. And they're genderless. I mean, I know that if you know a lot about birds, you can tell the difference in the feathers. But when you look at a picture of a falcon or something, it could be female, it could be male, and they exude the same power.
Very regal. And
yeah. And so, and you know, it's a play off our name.
I know, I love that.
I mean, so it's just a move, really.
So you haven't owned any, though?
I'm not really an I can't even pronounce a word.
Yeah.
What inspires me? When I was younger, I would have said, you baby. What inspires anybody? You know, the same thing. You know, it's fascinating to read this. You know, none of us know what to say in the wake of it, you know, but having terrorism be in the news all over, it's interesting. I hear this poem now in the throes. You know, what is equality? What is causes worth fighting for? What is worth? How do people find a bridge towards healing? It's everything is inspiring. My kid, I mean, you know, when I was young, I wrote a book about young love. When I was like turning 30, I wrote a book about getting married. Now I've spent the last decade with a bunch of small people, and you know, this is the best I could show. You know, so it's like life. It's everything. You know, so much of it I get to pour into acting. What's wonderful about acting is that you get to take on the physical accoutrements of another person's life, and you know, in doing that, you really start to realize how much of what we think of as ourself is flexible. Who we are and where we come from, and that our experiences aren't nearly as unique as we think. Our ability for compassion is amazing. You know, and never is it more represented than in a bookstore. You know, whether it's not, you know, we can read Russian literature from 100 years ago, and it can speak personally to us. We can read, you know, Indian poems and be moved by them, or it's amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah. I read a review of this book that talked about it as a kind of a self-help book, which I actually think that it's much more a philosophy book, and I really was impressed at it. And then I think in this particular time, which is a very cynical time.
That's why they call it a self-help book, because, you know, there's something even about that word that, you know, the fact that people don't like to use the word philosophy. I cut you off. Finish.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a very cynical time and people are very disappointed, and I think this would be something that would help people to put a rudder on their boat in the midst of a lot of propaganda shenanigans that are going on. And so I felt that this was, you know, a very timely, and you know, you may have sensed that also.
Thank you.
Timely book.
Putting a rudder on a boat is a great example. I mean, that's what you're really trying to do with teenagers. You know what I mean? Maybe that sounds funny, but it really is true. And about, the world is really old. Teenagers think their experiences are so important and so new and so specific to them, and yet, our ancestors and stuff have gone through all of this time and time again, and there are rudders available for you. You know, and so I particularly with my two oldest, I only got to see them every other weekend through the bulk of their childhood, and I just worried all the time. I just worry. I spent the last 17 years worrying, and I remember my great-grandmother told my mother the day I was born, oh, congratulations, you now have something to worry about the rest of your life. And that is basically what it is, But I that's what I hope this thing could be. It's been that for me. We're working on it. Yeah.
You said in an interview earlier this year that you said you compared celebrity as like a glass wall between you and the rest of the world.
Uh-huh.
And with your first novel, The Hottest State, and your documentary Seymour, you said it was like you tapping away at the glass, trying to break it down.
Yeah.
And I was wondering with this.
I get so worried when people said you said. I'm like, uh-oh, what the hell?
I was just saying, with this kind of book, with you releasing it, is this you chipping away at the glass again, or is this you saying I am a person of notoriety, I'm going to use that to get a positive message or messages out there in the world?
What I said, it's an interesting question. It really is, and to me it is anyway. And what I meant about the glass wall is that people always act so surprised when Michael Jackson goes nuts, or Britney Spears is shaving her head, or Elvis is giant and fat. And, the same thing happens over and over again. And that you'd mentioned River and Amanda Peterson, and whenever you get really treated as special. There's a funny thing about everybody thinks that getting treated as special is going to be this great thing, and all it actually does is make you feel isolated. And it's most of our great happiness comes from really common situations. I remember we just ran the marathon, and it was funny. I was trying to figure out. I was so moved, right? You're part of this river of people, and there's something about it so moving. And I thought about all the different hoity-toity, fancy pants situations I've been in my life where you have to wear tuxedos and you just feel terrible. You can't wait for it to end. You wake up and you're hungover, and you just I remember Eller Coltrane, who's the star of Boyhood. We were doing all the Oscar stuff, and after I just heard him say to somebody "This must be fun," and he said, "Just because they serve drinks doesn't mean it's a party." And it's weird. Why so much that, it's like, think of New Year's Eve or prom night, all these things that we think are going to be wonderful, and they're hepped up at such a pitch, and they end up feeling, happens to a lot of people in their wedding. You think it can never live up to your expectations, versus some weird day where you're just kind of walking in the grass and you sit down with a friend and, have a heart-to-heart as a memory you remember the rest of your life. My point being, wow, this is I got to the marathon. I'm going to come back to the point of this question. Is it me chipping away? I certainly don't think I'm a person of notoriety who has any advice to offer. I do think I enjoy doing this, and it seemed like a lot of fun to give it out. It seemed like the right time in my life to do it. I've done a lot of strange movies and weird things, but I haven't done much for young people, and young people are such a big part of my life. That the glass wall is, when people put you, when they want to punish you in prison, they put you in ISO, right? Isolation, and that's what celebrity does. It isolates you from the rest of the community. Everybody treats you differently. They ask you to take your picture as if you're somebody. And the more you play into it, the more you support some kind of false reality. But it's a strange dance, so I don't know. And the example of what a good question you asked is that I'm spinning, and I'm talking to my wife about it later. What's your question, young man?
Are you going to have any other new movies?
Have you talked to my agent? What's happening? We got to make it happen. I just finished The Magnificent Seven. We did a remake of that with Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt. It's going to be really super cool, I think, I hope. So that's what I just finished, and that'll come out next year. And I have a comedy, Maggie's Plan, with Julianne Moore, that's going to come out in a couple months. So, yeah.